So my name is Caroline Hallam. I am the OER and Electronic Resources Librarian here at Glendale Community College. And so the session you're in right now is Zero Textbook Cost and OER 101, Introduction and Basic Searching. So I like to start off any presentation with sort of why we're here. So how much do GCC students pay for books and supplies? Currently, the number this year is estimated at $1,152 annually. Now, this is actually a big improvement. That seems like a lot of money, but this is a big improvement, actually. It's down from an estimated $1,972 in 2019 to 2020. So we definitely are improving things at GCC, but students still do pay a lot for these resources. So what do students think about the textbook cost? So in the last two college profile student surveys conducted at GCC, students were asked whether or not they agreed that textbooks for their classes were too expensive. So we can see that 3/4 of students agree that their textbooks for their classes are too expensive. So that is student perception. But what actual material effects do high textbook prices have on students? Does anyone want to share something that they've seen with their students?
Students won't enroll in a class if it's too expensive.
That's right. Yep, that's one of them.
Basically, the student doesn't even buy the textbook, and then they're kind of short, that knowledge base when they are taking the class.
Yep. So they'll avoid buying the textbook and they'll try to, work around having that textbook, even though that can be really troublesome. Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. So yes, exactly. So this is actually from a Florida student textbook and course materials survey where they surveyed students in Florida universities and colleges about their behaviors around high textbook cost. So when asked, this was in 2022, the most recent version of this survey, 53% did not purchase a required textbook solely due to the cost. 44% will take fewer courses overall. 38% don't register for specific courses because the textbook cost is too high for that course. 24% have dropped a course because the textbook price was too high. And then what we're really worried about here is how it's impacting their learning. So not only is it affecting enrollment, but it also means that students will, because they aren't purchasing that textbook, they'll earn a poor grade in the course. 32% of students in this study had earned a poor grade in the course because they didn't buy the textbook because it was too expensive. 19% actually failed a course throughout so this is, throughout their educational career, but it's still a pretty high number. They also found that a lot of students didn't end up using some of the textbooks that they were required to purchase. And I know we all probably experienced that throughout our education. It can be really frustrating when you purchase something that's pretty expensive and it ends up not even being used in the course. Now, that might not be a problem, at GCC per se, but it's just another thing to think about. So there are quite a few methods to reduce textbook costs. What we're going to be talking about today is one method, open educational resources. However, you can also use licensed library materials where all students can access them at once. So if you came in a little bit early to the session, we were looking at one way that you can reduce textbook costs, which is to see if the library can actually just purchase an unlimited access version of the materials you're already using in your course. Now, that's something we try to do regularly a few times a year, is just check for everything that the bookstore has listed for all the courses at GCC. But it's always worth checking in, because we don't do it, we might not have caught your book. So that's always worth checking. So that's another option that you can have. And then also you could create your own materials. So we have quite a few folks at GCC that have created their own textbooks or just their own Canvas courses with their own writing. Then also you can bring in online articles and media that are freely shared. So videos on YouTube, for example, you know that if you use Canvas pretty regularly, you know that there's even a plugin where you can search for YouTube videos and add those into your courses. So those are a bunch of different ways where you can make it so that the student doesn't have to actually purchase something to be able to complete their coursework in your course. So what are open educational resources? The area that we're going to focus on today. So those are teaching materials that are free to access and are openly licensed. So that can include anything from entire courses to just an individual image that you're using within your course. So basically anything that is free to access and openly licensed. So I'm not going to go into depth on licensing today, but if you are more interested in that, the session on Wednesday, I am going to cover licensing in more depth. But just to give you a little basis in it, this is an open license. So you are looking for something like this on the material that you're trying to use as an open educational resource. So what this is a Creative Commons license. It's one of the open licenses that are available for content creators to put onto things that they create, things that they have copyright to. So this particular one was this is an image that I took from a video called Introduction to Open Education by Robin Rich. She licensed this material as Creative Commons attribution share alike. So that means basically that I can do whatever I want with this image, with this content, as long as I include this license and say I didn't create it, basically. So there's a few more like pieces to this license. It's basically I have to attribute the original person and I have to share it under the same license. But we can talk about that in more depth on Wednesday. But just as an intro, this is what an open license can look like. Okay, so let's look at an example of an OER textbook. So, oops, let's go back in here. Okay, so this is a statistics textbook, and I'll also pop this into the chat if you'd like to take a look at it yourself. So this is just one of our open educational resource creators that we have at our disposal. So this is OpenStax. It's run through Rice University, and it's kind of the creme de la creme because they have a lot of ancillary materials that go along with it, like a lot of instructor resources. And also your students can order, if they prefer to use print, they can order a nice print bound copy from Amazon right here. And these can also be purchased by the bookstore and you know, the bookstore can also provide access to them. So this is just like sort of has all the bells and whistles. So I'm not logged into anything. I'm not authenticated in, and I already have full access to this textbook. So anyone can read this textbook. Anyone can use it. They have some study tools over here that they'll highlight the first time you go onto the page. But yeah, it's basically these just an interactive textbook. Some of them will include videos as well. It really just depends on the textbook. So it's nice they have these little, you know, problems with solutions. So yeah, I mean, basically a typical textbook, right? Now students, not all students have like super stable internet, as much as we try to, you know, get students free access to internet at GCC through mobile hotspots and all of that. But if they need to, they can also download a PDF so that they can use it offline as well. So you can just download this PDF and you can, you know, add it to your e-reader, to your phone, whatever you prefer to use. In addition, like I said, this has instructor resources. So you'll see this little lock here. It doesn't mean you have to pay for anything. It just means that you need to log in and prove that you're an instructor so that you get access to all these test banks. In addition, all of the OpenStax textbooks have their own OER Commons hub. So this is another organization that works in the OER space. These are free resources that other instructors have created to go along with this textbook, and they're sharing them back out to the community. All right. So let's go back to the homepage of this book. And down here, you'll see some information about like when it was first published, when the web version was last updated. You'll see ISBNs as well. And then look, here's that license. OpenStax is licensed under a Creative Commons attribution license. So you're free to use this any way you want. You are free to download this, to share it back out. You have tons of rights to use this material. Okay, so that's one example of an OER textbook. Not all of them have as many bells and whistles as this. Sometimes you'll just find basically a PDF that is an open textbook, or you'll just find a like Google site. So this is just one provider. We're going to look at some other ones as well. Are there any questions at this point about what OER is?
Yes. But it's not about what OER is, but how do they authenticate that you're an instructor? And do I have to do it every single time? Or can I go on there once and forevermore, I'm good?
Yeah, you should be able to go on there once and forevermore be good. Basically, you just have to create an OpenStax account. And then you basically are just proving, like you just, I believe what you do is it's been a while since I set up my account, but what you do is you provide like the page on the like GCC directory that shows that you're an instructor. So you're just like, yeah, proving that you are an instructor at GCC basically.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is OpenStax my favorite host then? Do they have requirements about how often the text is updated? Great question. So it's my favorite just because it's so much like a regular textbook. It's like very nicely fleshed out. And they do update them pretty frequently. They have like a good update schedule. They don't really publicize what the schedule is, but from what I've seen, they update them pretty frequently. And then Jennifer says, I use OpenStax and have used it for years for astronomy. It's phenomenal. Yay, I love that. Use them for intro site, quite good, excellent.
I haven't been on the OER site for a while, but could you search only certain, like, can I only search OpenStax for information or am I searching all of OER when I'm searching for a topic?
Oh, so, okay, so actually, let's come back to that.
Okay.
I'm going to show you how to search for other OER because not everything is covered by OpenStax. OpenStax is really good for these sort of like these, they sort of aim for the classes that almost every college student has to take. So statistics or they have some like anthropology or sociology. So they like aim for those sort of introductory level classes, which is why it's really actually great for community colleges for those like, you know, that first year of coursework.
Okay.
But I'm going to show you more. So we'll get back to that. Great question. Okay. So let me go to the next slide here. Okay. So I do want to give you a caveat here. So OER is a very specific type of resource, right? I mentioned that it's free to access and it's openly licensed, right? It has that, you know, it may have a Creative Commons license, a lot of them do, or it just may list a different licensing permissions that aren't attached to Creative Commons, which is just one organization that makes these licenses. So a lot of people will say that they are using OER, but it's not actually quite OER, right? So let's sort of look at this Venn diagram together. So we've got the big bubble of free access on the internet, right? So in that bubble, you could have legally available and openly licensed materials, right? But we also have some things that are not legally available or openly licensed, like pirated copies of textbooks or books. So you may find like an entire Cengage textbook, you know, a PDF of it, right? It's not hard to find those things. However, they are illegally posted and often illegally hosted. You don't know, like for one thing, you don't want to take that pirated content and, copy it onto school systems and share it out, because that like sort of opens you up for a liability, right? You're pirating content, you're violating copyright. If you link to it, the link can go down. So this isn't something you want to rely on as the way that you're going to give all of your students free content, right? You don't want to link or add that content into the school systems, because that is illegally shared. You might also find movies posted online without permission. Same thing, even if it's on YouTube, sometimes, we know copyright strikes happen a lot on YouTube. Content gets taken down all the time. So, so those things aren't the best practices, let's say. I would not recommend them. Now, you may have heard last semester, some of you may have heard of Z Library. A lot of folks, a lot of students were finding textbooks on Z Library. The whole site got taken down last semester, in the middle of the semester, and it left a lot of students scrambling and a lot of instructors scrambling, because they were sort of directing their students to Z Library, but it was all pirated content. So not the best practice, but luckily there are a lot of legal options. So in the next little bubble there, we see legally available. So this is that bubble. It includes openly licensed content like OER, but the legally available resources that aren't necessarily openly licensed would be library resources. So the library pays for access to literally millions of articles, ebooks, feature films, documentaries, and we can definitely investigate licensing more content for you if there's something specific you need that we don't have. Not everything is going to be available for the library to license. Unfortunately, textbook publishers don't generally want the library to offer unlimited access to textbooks, right? Because those are big money makers. So, so there's some caveats there, but library resources can be a really great way to get your students legal access to books, movies, and more. Legally available, another legally available freely online would be news websites. So a lot of news websites have been going, more and more have been going behind a paywall, right? But you can still get, free articles from news websites, as we know. Excerpts of copyrighted works posted with permission. So you may find, like, for example, there are some poetry foundations that will post poems of the day, with the permission of the original author. And those are freely accessible and legally shared. And then also materials created by you. You might not even put an open license on it, but if you're sharing it out freely online to your students, that's another legally available area of content. Then we have our openly licensed, which is more what we're focusing on today. So that is open educational resources. It's also open access journals. So these are journals that are not behind, academic journals that are not behind a paywall. They are openly licensed materials, so you can actually reproduce them. Another area, not quite the same as OER, but in the same sort of family. We also have open access books, very similar to open access journals, for authors that have made the decision to publish their monographs or collections of articles as an openly licensed material. And then we also have public domain items. So if it's old enough, it could be in the public domain, right? If your students are studying Shakespeare, they can get all of that legally online. That is way out of copyright, right? So public domain items that currently, let's see, let me double check what it is now, because we just had another public domain day. Public domain day. So works from 1927 and before are open to all. So now Metropolis is actually out of copyright. So To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, you don't have to pay for that anymore because it's in the public domain. All right, so just to refresh, free access, lightning bolt, do not recommend that level. Legally available, smiley face, that's good. Openly licensed OER, that's really great. fantastic, because you can copy that material into systems without, having to worry about violating copyright. You don't have to link to it. You can actually even edit it yourself if you want to make your own version. It's just, that is really, we heart it. All right. So are there any questions about OER versus free before we move on?
The
Yes.
copyright attribution on this slide is different from the last one. Can you
Oh,
describe
it
that?
is? Oh, than the last one I showed. So this
Yeah.
one, I created this chart and I'm sharing it under a Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. So this presentation, you'll actually see at the very beginning. This presentation is overall, it has this attribution license, which is the broadest available Creative Commons license, which means you can like copy the content and do whatever you want with it as long as you attribute the original creators. So this work is licensed under a CC BY license with exceptions noted for some images. So I've added some exceptions for some of these images, like this one. So this one's a little bit more of a stricter license, but you can look up if you're ever wondering what this license does. You can always just Google CC BY SA, whatever the license terms are, and you'll get a nice write-up that tells you what you're allowed to do with it. All right, cool. All right. So let's get to the fun bit. All right, searching for OER in repositories. So again, feel free if you would like to search for your own content, you can do so. Actually, I'm gonna make us do it. How about that? So yes. So in here, I'm just gonna show you a few of these OER repositories and then I'll let you play around for a few minutes and then we'll report back. So the first, I've ordered them on this guide, on our OER guide, by what I recommend. So I like starting with the ASCCC OERI, which is actually just a California Community College OER resources by discipline listing. So you can find your discipline here, and then you can scroll through the available OER. So this is an interesting thing. All right, core econ. So yeah, so this is actually a really nice write-up. I haven't actually opened economics before, I realized, but then you'll also have it in this format as well. Open educational resources in computer science. They'll have it divided out by CID. So yeah, so really great resource. That's what I recommend starting with. Then the second one is even more resources available in OASIS. So this is a open access search tool that searches across a bunch of different OER repositories. So you can see the sources that they ingest on the sources slide here, but you'll see OpenStax in here, College of the Canyons, a bunch of different providers that are providing BC Campus, JSTOR, Open Access Books. So just a bunch of great providers of content. And you can just search in here for textbooks, for course materials. So just put in your keywords and it's very user-friendly. So for example, economics, do a little search. And then over here, you can change the type. So if you just are looking for a one-to-one like switch of textbook, you can find that here by limiting over here under type to textbook. All right, so that is another option. Then the third I really like is Open Textbook Library. This is a very selective resource. So let's see here, submit. So they require all of this criteria to be listed in the Open Textbook Library. And then, which is that it has to be used at a higher education institution. It has to be the complete textbook available. It needs to be openly licensed, and it must be an original textbook. And then what's nice about this is that they actually, they go around and do instructional events at a bunch of different campuses across the United States. And they actually will pay faculty to then write reviews. And they are like they say, do not write us a good review. Don't write a good review about this book, write an honest review. And so you'll see what's really nice about this is that then they rate each area. So comprehensiveness, content, accuracy, relevance and longevity, clarity. And so then you can see if there's like certain areas that you need to supplement with additional reading and things like that. So some good peer review. All right, and then my final suggestion is the Mason OER MetaFinder. Now, if you've been in one of my sessions before, I say that this is the interface that only a librarian could love. I now amend that and say librarians don't even love it. I found out, but it really is, it's my kind of search where you just really are drinking from the fire hose of every available, piece of information. And it really helps my FOMO, or fear of missing out. So this does a really deep search across digital heritage institutions. So you're going to get a lot of, especially if you're teaching like a historical, teaching in history or teaching a historical aspect of your particular discipline, you can find things that are in the public domain and other open access books. You can also just limit it down to textbooks only, but this thing is, wow, it's very powerful. And it just includes even more repositories than Oasis. But I don't recommend this to start off with because the interface can be a little bit more like challenging. It's kind of a little more old school, I guess. So you'll see in a minute, like they're going to pop up that there are additional results found. They'll ask if I want to add to it. But over here, you can do a date range picker. You can also limit the document type. Okay, yeah, here we go. 300 additional results, add the results. Because they're searching so many places, it's a little more clunky. But yeah, so you can limit over here by book. And also if you want to change your options, go back to the Mason OER MetaFinder homepage. So you can also, if you're not interested in doing that deeper search of sort of like, older materials that might be in the public domain, you can turn off deeper search and just search OER specific sites as well. So this is a little more clunky, but I love this. It makes me feel like I can I have everything at my fingertips. So go ahead, everyone, and pick one or two of these searches and search for something for your own courses. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so it's easier for you to get to that link. And I shared the link in the chat in case anyone joined a little later. This is where that is. So we have, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go ahead and look through that, and then we'll check back in. All right. Halftime warning, about 4 minutes left in your search. So if you want to try a different one of the search interfaces, go ahead. All right, 1 minute warning, start wrapping up those searches. All right. So would anyone like to share anything that they found? You can share your screen or just unmute yourself or put it in the chat, whichever way you want to go. Yes, I'm seeing.
Well, I took on the Mason MetaFinder. I mean, what the heck? And I found a really good intro to mass communications text. From what I could tell, the author was someone worthy of writing such a text. I mean, one of the concerns that I have is if there's no publisher, there's really no gatekeeper. And God knows who can write a textbook, but I think this guy is worthy. Kind of poking through the contents. The one thing I'm concerned about is, I'm used to textbooks that update on a regular pattern. So, like, okay, next fall, we're going to go to the 9th edition or what have you. With this, can what students see change in the middle of the semester?
It would depend on the provider. So which resource were you using?
Let's see, it took me to Libre something or other. What was it?
LibreText.
LibreText, yeah.
Yes. Okay, yes. So the content can change, but it would just be if that author was making a new edition. So yeah, so you can make with LibreText specifically, and we're going to talk more about this on Wednesday, like adapting textbooks to fit your class. You can actually make a copy of that whole textbook in LibreText, and then, cut out bits that you don't want, and like make sure that then that content isn't going to change in the middle of the semester.
Okay, so you can freeze it for that
Yeah.
semester. Okay.
You can freeze it. You can download it as well as
Mhm.
a PDF, and then students could just read that version.
Okay.
Yeah. Generally, if it's going to be a whole overhaul like that, they tend to just release a new edition. So it'll be like a different file, but it really kind of depends on the provider.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. All right.
I
anyone
had
else
a
wanna-
quick question.
Yeah.
I look for lots of things, and like my friend there, yes, I went through the the big search there. But what about like images? I teach a theater class, and I love showing images of old Greek theaters and things like that. I was to obtain those images, do we have to request? Because a lot of that stuff I saw was in Library of Congress, some of the stuff I was looking for.
Yeah. So Library of Congress, yeah, do you have a specific one you want to share with us that we could look at?
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, I could do this one. Should I just send you the address here, put it in the chat?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I can open it up and we can share.
Okay, let me do that.
Okay, great. Let me open that chat again. Okay, so Digital Public Library of America. Here's the old theater. So it's in copyright. Let's see, standardized rights statement. This item is protected by copyright and or related rights. You are free to use this item in any way that is permitted by copyright and related rights legislation that applies to your use. For other uses, you need to obtain permission from the rights holder. That's really useful for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I was confused about that too. That was my other part of the question.
So we can open it up and see what it looks like. You could link to it. You could definitely, let's see.
Okay, I wasn't sure how to pop it open, I guess.
Oh yeah, so it looks like you just need to go to Greece. Just take the students to Greece.
Well, that was my second idea, but that's more for Jeanette, and I could use a vacation.
Okay, so this is from Oregon Digital. Photographer is Stephen Lowenstem. Photograph from the personal collection of Dr. Stephen Lowenstem. It's in copyright. So you could just link to this where it lives here because they have the permission to share it. It's not openly licensed, but it is legally available online. So you could just link to this, or you could embed this in your Canvas course page.
Yeah, because I do that a lot where I find lots of pictures, and I probably shouldn't be doing a lot of that.
Well, I mean, there's also, we could talk about copyright and fair use too. You know, the district right now is has convened or the Senate has convened a copyright task force to look at the administrative regulation on that because it hasn't been updated since 2000. So hopefully there'll be more guidance soon from the district on fair use and things like that. But you can look into fair use. I don't feel like I'm qualified at this point to give you a full rundown of it, but there is a page on the GCC OER guide that talks about fair use. So you could make that, see what you think about that determination on copyright and licensing.
Right.
You can read through that and just learn a little more about copyright.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see what else we had here in the chat. Open textbook library, English as a second language communications, and introductory text. All right, cool. That sounds good. OER oral communication for non-native speakers of English, book English as a second language. Oh, cool. Okay, I could only find one source for real estate. Unfortunately, it's not approved by the DRE. That's probably why it's free. Walt, do you want to say anything else about that? Oh, I think you said earlier that you don't have your mic. So if you want to add anything on that, feel free to add in the chat, but understood. There are some areas, and another one of you let us know that public health is one of those areas. Some of these areas are still under development with OER, and that's where we could use you to make an OER, which we can talk about on Wednesday too. Let's see what else. Not a lot in theater arts. Technical theater practicum by Christopher Boltz is great. Found in Oasis. Awesome. Does GCC have access to contemporary plays through the library database for new play exchange and digital theater plus? So yeah, so we talked a little bit. I touched on this, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Let me share my screen again. So the library does have a ton of resources that are zero cost to students. You can search for them through the library website. Oh my gosh, that is, I can't believe that old link is still in my slides. Sorry about that. Okay, this is the library website. So you can search here for books and articles. And also we have not everything. So this is our cross search, one search. Not everything that we subscribe to is in there. Not all of the vendors play well together. So you can also look in our databases A to Z for your subject area. So for theater, we have Digital Theater Plus, which shows like recorded theater productions. And we also have Films on Demand, which has some recorded theatrical productions. And then there's also the New Play Exchange, which we also have access to, which we can license plays through as well. But yeah, did you have any further questions about that? I think it was Jeanette.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay,
I've used both of those before, and they do cost, but it's necessary. It certainly was necessary during the pandemic. So hopefully they'll continue on with those. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not a lot. It certainly saves students quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they've been renewed for this year. So yeah, they're being used for sure. Okay, so I also chose Mason and found a clever textbook, A Survey of Music Theory for the College Classroom Fundamentals. Excellent. Love to hear that. Graphic design. Ooh, good question, Annabella. That might even be something that you might find through, if there isn't a good OER for it, I mean, we can always do a search. You and I could do a consultation. We could search together. So if you're having trouble finding something, that's always an option. And I'm going to put that contact information up at the end of this session. So Annabella, we might need to do a session, just you and me, looking for that, because we can get into the weeds with that. Okay. Aaron says, I've noticed that a lot of OER are very boring and lack images or graphs, etc. Aaron, do you want to chat a little bit about that? That's a good point.
Sure. And this is probably, again, one of the reasons why textbooks cost so much. But yeah, I've just noticed that they are kind of boring. So what are some ways that we can, or the authors can like kind of jazz them up a little bit? Are there free or open access, unlicensed types of photos, like a search that we could, go to find things? Do we have to create some of our own visual representations, like our own graphs, things like that? What are kind of the limits on that?
Yeah, so that's one option, is taking your own pictures, making your own, videos, or making your own graphs, like you said. And then also you can do searching for items that have been shared out either in the public domain or under open licenses. So one way that's good for that is actually just to use Google image search. So let's see, I'm gonna do lunge. Images. And then under tools, then you can actually select the usage rights. So you could do Creative Commons licenses and see what shows up. So you'd want to like, look on the website, but Flickr is one option. A lot of the content on Flickr has been uploaded with a Creative Commons license. And then another option is Wiki Commons. Wikipedia has a ton of imagery that has been shared out under Creative Commons licensing. But you can also use this. Actually, Wiki Commons, maybe I'm using that wrong, but Wikipedia, let's look up a lunge. Lunge exercise. Okay, so let's see what the rights are on this. Show me this. Okay, here it is. Airman performing lunge. This is a file from the Wikimedia Commons. So Wikimedia Commons, not Wiki Commons, I apologize. So this is described. So because this was actually created by the US military, actually I found a lot of my best images from the US military, just random like pictures in classrooms and stuff like that. Because anything that the US government creates is like in the public domain, because we already paid for it as citizens that pay our taxes. So this is actually in the public domain. It doesn't even have copyright because it was created by the Air Force and released by the Air Force. So NASA images are another thing that is freely available for everybody. Very cool. Yeah, so those are some of your options with finding imagery if you want to spice things up. All right, and is 1984 by George Orwell available through Glendale? So let me just double check that. So we can search in here for books. I'm searching everything. I'm going to limit it down to books. Okay, it looks like it. So we've got a critical insights. That's not what we want. So we've got books about 1984. And it looks like we do have a version available online. Let's see what the licensing. We have unlimited access. So if you were using this in your course, that would be zero cost to your students. You can just link to it here. Yes, Ivan. Oh yeah, unmute.
Oh, there we go. I had a critical reading exercise book that had total access. It even said I could modify it. I forgot the terminology. So I modified it by jazzing it up with photos. And it kind of occurs to me today that maybe not all of those are. But anyway, how do I go backwards, have a photo that I like, and then find out? I mean, I don't recall where I got them from. How do I? Yeah, how do I find those and then check whether I had proper access?
So you can do reverse image search on, let's see, if we go back to our Google image search. You can upload an image here and search by image. So you can do a reverse image search and see where it showed up.
Oh yeah, I see all the boxes up here. Yeah, that.
Yeah, so you
That
can
one, yeah.
see if anyone has so I'm just gonna put in a random screenshot. Let's see.
Can you also do it with your phone? Take a picture of it, and then it will bring up all the websites that have that similar image.
Exactly. Yeah, there's another specialized tool called TinEye, but Google added this image search, and that's generally what I use now. But TinEye is another option.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so great questions, everyone. Great discussion. We just got 5 minutes left, so unfortunately, I'm gonna throw 2 more acronyms at you, but then that's it, I promise. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back to my slideshow. All right. So zero textbook cost, ZTC, and OER. Oh no, more acronyms. All right. So at GCC, just like the California community colleges across the state are required to by law, classes are marked as 0 textbook cost or low textbook cost in the class schedule. So this is actually required by state law that all community colleges have this demarcation in their online class schedules. So 0 textbook cost is classes that offer free access to all textbooks and course materials used in the class. So this means simultaneous access. All your students can access this material for free. Low textbook cost classes have a textbook and materials cost that is less than $40 total. So if you can't quite get to ZTC at this point, anything really does help. If you want to just find an alternate textbook, commercial textbook, or selection of novels that would total to less than $40, you can list your course as low textbook cost instead, and that's really helpful to students as well. So OER, what we talked about today, and we also talked a little bit about library resources, right? But open educational resources are just one type of material that can be used to make a class ZTC. So if you're interested in learning more about ZTC and LTC here at our college, this is a student-facing public page here. We're working currently to add this as a link under class schedule. Got approved by the Senate and passed on up the food chain. But this describes how to find 0 textbook cost courses online. And it also lists all of the current classes that offer sections that are low textbook cost or 0 textbook cost. And then you can see our ZTC stats. So because of folks like you that have been saving their students money, students have saved a total of $5.3 million since fall of 2018. So down here, you can see to list your course sections as ZTC or LTC, you let your division know when you accept your section assignments, and then they'll submit that information to the curriculum department. If your section still isn't listed correctly in the online course schedule, just due to whatever falling through the cracks or whatever, you can contact the curriculum department directly to correct the listing. All right, so I'm seeing Mike is raising his hand. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I'm a little bit curious about the rules on something being designated as LTC. If I drag my feet a little bit in sticking with the old edition of the text and I can find it for under $40 used, does that qualify it for LTC or what are the rules?
So it should be the bookstore cost. Because a lot of our students actually do have financial aid that's tied to the bookstore. So we really should be listing our all of our textbooks with the bookstore, just so that those students can get access to those books. Right. So then I'm seeing a question. What if I want to use an older edition of a text which is available as a PDF? And then Allison pointed out, can you determine if that's legally available? Lots of folks scan books but are violating copyright. So that is exactly right. It depends on where it's available from. If it's available from the publisher, it's available from the copyright holder, then that's one thing. We actually have had a few authors of really excellent textbooks that are going out of print, where the copyright has reverted back to the author. Some authors are starting to share out these textbooks as OER. So that actually happened recently, I believe, with a really big chemistry textbook. So it could be the case that, that's what the person who owns the copyright is doing, but that's very rare. So I do want to put that out there, though, especially if there are any textbook authors in this call. But, if your books are going out of print, think about it. We can talk about sharing out your book as OER. Okay. So we already talked about another option, not just open educational resources, but we also have a lot of stuff through the library, which we just talked about. I showed you 1984 is available through the library. But so if you're interested in that, you can always contact us to license additional titles. All right, so as I teased throughout this session, up next is a 0 textbook cost in OER 102 on Wednesday, same time, also on Zoom, so you can sign up via the VRC. And we'll be talking a little bit more about licensing. So we'll get a little more into that nitty gritty. We'll talk about ancillary materials, and we'll talk about embedding content into Canvas. All right, so if you need any help with OER and textbook affordability, you can always check out the OER guide, or you can also contact me. My email address is there, or you can also fill out a form and request an OER consultation. Give me a little more information about what you're looking for, what you've done so far, and I'm happy to do it for individuals or groups. You know, if you want to invite me to a meeting, feel free to fill out that form and I'd be happy to come. All right, so I'll be sticking around for a few more